Are you seriously touching that phone, janitor? The words hit harder than the slamming door. Carson's voice cut through the banking hall like a blade, slicing every murmur into silence. Naomi froze, still holding the phone. Her latex gloves creaked as she instinctively tightened her grip. The marble floor beneath her shoes suddenly felt like ice. The call had been ringing once, twice, a third time. No one at the counter dared answer. Too risky, too high level. It was the VIP line. But the janitor had stepped in, and she'd answered it, in fluent Japanese. A hush fell. Then the cameras lifted. A white teen live streamer near the coffee machine whispered to his phone, "Yo!" She just said moshi moshi. From behind the glass conference room, Carson, the white branch manager in his crisp gray suit, exploded out. His face blotched red, eyes locked on Naomi like she'd burned the place down. "You are here to mop the damn floor, not speak, and definitely not answer client lines in foreign languages." He yanked the phone from her hand. The receiver swung loose on its cord, swaying like a noose. Naomi lowered her eyes. Not a word. Her fingers trembled, but she wouldn't let them see it. At 9:32 a.m., in a bank buzzing with promotions and promises, a janitor dared to break script. She answered a call meant for someone else, and in that moment, Arlington West Bank stopped breathing. On the live stream, comments exploded. "Why's he yelling?" "She saved your call, bro." "Bet she knows more than half the staff." Phones were now recording. Customers were whispering. Naomi stood in the center of it all, silent, steady. She hadn't said another word. But the damage was done. Or was it something else that had just begun? What would you have done if your entire worth was questioned? Just for speaking up in a language no one expected. Have you ever been judged before they even knew your story? Drop your experience in the comments. Your voice matters here. And now, behind the glass door, the storm was just beginning. Carson didn't wait. He grabbed Naomi by the elbow and dragged her into the glass conference room. The door slammed shut behind them. The whole bank paused, not out of concern, but instinct. Like animals sensing a kill. "You don't just insert yourself," he snapped, circling her like a threat. "You think speaking Japanese makes you qualified to handle corporate accounts." Naomi stood still, hands clasped behind her. Her gloves creaked as she tightened her grip. He slapped a binder onto the glass table. "This is Mr. Hiroshi. He's not some local client with a checking account. He represents $40 million. You embarrassed this branch in front of him. People said you could see everything from 10 feet away, every glare, every word unsaid. But she couldn't see them. Only feel the weight." "She overstepped," Carson growled. "She made us look unprofessional. And I won't let that go." Naomi's gaze dropped, but her spine didn't. "Starting today, you're on basement detail. No lobby, no client visibility. You'll do what janitors do. Quietly. Out of sight." "Outside," someone gasped. A voice whispered, "He's punishing her because she spoke up." "Inside," Naomi didn't flinch. Not even when Carson leaned close. "You don't speak for this bank. You don't belong in rooms like this. And you sure as hell don't pick up VIP calls." She turned. "I didn't dismiss," he started. But Naomi was already walking out. Past the glass. Past the murmurs. Past the phone still rolling. And everyone saw her go. She didn't look back. Not once. As she stepped back into the lobby, her footsteps echoed louder than any voice. Phones lowered. Eyes scattered. But not all. A junior teller named Liana, the only other black woman on staff, stared straight ahead, hands frozen over her keyboard. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Behind Naomi, Carson reappeared behind the glass, still fuming, still red. But no one moved to greet him. No one offered to defend him. The silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. It was judgment. And Naomi, she didn't need to fight back. Not yet. Naomi moved through the corridor with the kind of presence that makes people act like they don't see you, too alert, too aware, pretending too hard. Behind her, the glass conference room was already fading into just another piece of architecture. But the residue of what happened there clung to her like static. She passed the front desk. One of the interns shifted awkwardly. glanced at her, then quickly turned to the screen. Another let out a quiet snort. Basement shift, someone muttered near the printer. She's lucky she didn't get canned. For what being multilingual, a voice replied. Laughter followed. Short, clipped, dagger-like. Naomi kept walking. The janitor's closet was halfway down the hall, tucked beside the staircase. When she reached it, her cart was missing. Instead, her mop had been tossed across a recycling bin. Its handle split slightly at the edge. Deliberate. She picked it up slowly, eyes steady. At that moment, the hallway lights buzzed faintly overhead, flickering once before settling again. It felt like the building itself didn't want her here. Inside the break room, she grabbed a cup and filled it at the water dispenser. A trio of tellers entered, mid-conversation. They stopped talking the second they saw her. One offered a thin smile. The other two walked past like she was a smudge on the wall. She drank without flinching, placed the cup gently in the sink, and left. To me, silence like that doesn't just exclude, it defines who people think belongs in the room, and who doesn't. Back in the hallway, a bank flyer on the bulletin board read, Culture of Inclusion. Naomi stared at it for a beat, then adjusted her gloves. Someone had scribbled something in Sharpie on the edge of her supply cart, talk less. Clean more. She didn't wipe it off. Didn't even pause. Just pushed the cart forward, the wheels creaking in rhythm with her breath. A phone camera peeked out from behind the corner. Another whisper rose, that her, yeah. That's the girl from the clip. Naomi didn't stop. Didn't look. But every step was heavier. Not from shame. From holding it all in. Naomi was wiping down the marble near the appointment booths when she saw him, an elderly man in a brown coat, holding a stack of forms, squinting at the fine print. He looked lost. The staff nearby pretended not to see. Naomi hesitated, then stepped forward. Do you need help filling those out? Sir, he looked up, relieved. Yes, please? These digital slips. I don't understand half of it. She crouched beside him, pointing gently to the section labeled Investment Intent. He smiled, nodding. Her pen hovered, ready to assist. That's when a voice cut through the room. Naomi, step away from the client. It was Valerie, floor supervisor, late 30s, blonde, precise. She walked over with her tablet clutched tight and a look sharp enough to puncture confidence. You're not trained for this, she said, and you're not paid to play consultant. Naomi rose slowly. He just needed help with the wording. Then he can wait for someone qualified, Valerie snapped. You've got sanitizing to finish, haven't you? The old man glanced between them, confused. She was doing fine, sir. Please wait in line. A representative will assist you. Naomi returned to her cart. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up the spray bottle. The trigger clicked once, twice. The bottle stayed full. What gets me isn't the volume of disrespect, it's the calmness of it. Like cruelty wrapped in protocol. Valerie didn't look back, but everyone else did. No one said anything. The old man stood alone at the desk, form in hand. Naomi, shoulders squared, resumed wiping the counter over and over. Longer than necessary. She moved slower now. Not because she was tired, but because speed meant nothing when no one saw you. Behind her, footsteps passed. Valerie's heels. Someone else's chuckle. She didn't turn. The disinfectant spray hissed twice before silence reclaimed the lobby. Near the coffee corner, a young woman in a pantsuit lowered her phone slightly, watching Naomi for a beat too long. Their eyes met. Briefly. Then the woman turned away, pretending to read a flyer. On the wall behind Naomi, a poster read, Service starts with kindness. She straightened her back, adjusted her collar, and returned to scrubbing a countertop that had nothing on it but invisible expectations. The weekly branch meeting was held every Thursday at 9 a.m. Today, it started 5 minutes early because Carson had a point to make. Naomi stood in the back of the room, near the coffee station, still in uniform. No one had told her not to attend, but no one had asked her to sit either. Carson stood near the screen, flipping through slides about client retention and policy updates. Then he stopped, turned slowly. I want to take a moment, he said, to remind everyone about roles. Protocol, rasa surat samayum karmasam, sfeminorm. Boundaries. His eyes didn't scan the room, They locked on her. When each of us steps outside our assigned lane, we don't just risk mistakes. We jeopardize trust. We damage the brand. A few heads turned. Most didn't. Someone cleared their throat. Valerie smirked. Naomi didn't move. Let me be clear, Carson added. This isn't about race. You and a recipe agreement. Or ambition. It's about order. And respecting how we do things here. I always notice how people rush to say what it's not about long before they admit what it is. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed. No one spoke. The presentation resumed. Naomi remained at the back. Not dismissed. Not acknowledged or the Swanemun. Just sit there. Like part of the wall. But even walls remember what gets said in rooms like this. Carson clicked to the next slide, though no one was really looking anymore. Take last Monday, he said, voice casual but sharp. A protocol was broken. A phone line meant for designated officers was accessed without clearance. Murmurs began. Not loud, one but real. Some may call it initiative, he added, smiling thinly. I call it negligence. In the second row, a young analyst shifted in his chair. His hand twitched upward, almost as if to speak, but the woman beside him gently tapped his forearm. He lowered it. Carson's gaze lingered there a second too long, then turned back to the screen. Naomi stood motionless, but her hand gripped the edge of the coffee counter. The folded towel in her palm now bore the imprint of her nails. Her other hand rubbed the wrist beneath her glove, where a red line was beginning to form. The air felt thin, not hot, not cold, just a shivering, tight. Around the room, eyes darted, not toward her, but toward the door, the clock, anywhere else. One supervisor took a sip of coffee that had long gone cold. This concludes our update, Carson said. Let's remember who we are and what our roles mean. He didn't dismiss her. He didn't need to. The message had already landed. Naomi turned toward the exit. No one followed. No one stopped her. And yet, in that moment, she'd never felt more watched. If your name was used to warn others not for praise, but as a lesson in silence, how would you carry that? Tell us below. And now, in the quiet corner of a hallway no one cared to clean, a phone would ring again. The air inside Arlington West Bank felt heavier on rainy days. Damp umbrellas leaned against chairs. Floors shimmered with drying footprints. And everyone moved slower except the clock. Naomi was disinfecting the corner of the front desk, moving with methodical calm when the direct client line began to ring. Its tone was sharper, louder, impossible to mistake. Everyone knew that line. 3 rings. 4. The receptionist hesitated, looked toward the hallway. Another associate quickly ducked into the copy room. No one reached for the phone. Naomi watched the cord vibrate slightly with each ring. Her heart matched it, then slowed. Her hand moved before her mind did. She picked up the receiver. Moshi moshi, Eirinton Westo Ginko de gozaimasu. Her voice was calm, steady. But the response hit hard, rapid Japanese, tense, clipped, filled with frustration. The man on the other end was angry. Details flew past investment documents not received. Miscommunication from the Carson team. Threat to pull a 7-figure portfolio. Naomi's fingers curled slightly around the cord. She didn't interrupt. When he paused for breath, she repeated his concerns back in clear, formal Japanese. Asked for clarification. Offered to document the points herself. There was a silence and momentum, a real one. Then softer, more curious. Who am I speaking with, Naomi? She said. Just Naomi. Another pause. This time, not empty, but deliberate. To me, the most powerful shifts don't come with shouting. They come when someone realizes they've finally been heard and didn't expect to be. The man's voice lowered. Thank you, Naomi-san, he said slowly. Please stay on the line. I will speak with your manager next. The line didn't click. It didn't rush. It held. And the it's solid, calm. Respectful? Behind Naomi, no one had noticed the shift. But it had already begun. Naomi pressed the transfer button and placed the receiver gently into its cradle. Carson arrived seconds later. Breath quick, a practiced smile already on. He didn't thank her. just picked up the line like he owned it. Mr. Hiroshi, yes. This is Carson, branch manager. What can I help you with? His voice was smooth, rehearsed, confident. But then came the silence. Washineshawam. Heavy. Carson's eyes narrowed, his back straightened. Yes. I see. That's not the information I was given. A beat. Then another. The color in his cheeks began to fade. No, she's not client-facing. He stopped, jaw clenched. On the other side of the lobby, a younger associate named Brian watched from his workstation. He couldn't hear the words, but he saw Carson's grip tighten on the desk, knuckles paling. Naomi had already stepped back to her cart. Valerie approached, arms crossed. What exactly did you say to him? Nothing he didn't already know, Naomi replied. Valerie narrowed her eyes. Don't get clever. Just tell me. Naomi looked straight ahead. I told the truth. In his language. Clearly, Valerie scoffed. You think that's going to impress him? Naomi didn't answer. But Carson, still on the line, turned just for a second and looked at her. Not with anger, with something else. Tiwatsansonorn. Uncertainty. I've learned that the people who fear losing control are the first to notice when it slips even slightly. Carson turned away. His voice returned, but this time it strained to sound in charge. Naomi picked up her rag, resumed wiping down the desk. But the cloth no longer trembled in her hand. And for the first time since Monday, no one told her to stop. The scent came first paper and printer ink, mixed with the dampness of old carpet. Naomi stood in the lobby, but her mind drifted back to a dorm room with a flickering desk lamp, a stack of textbooks, and rain tapping on the window like a second hand on a cheap clock. She was 19. Her headphones rested unevenly over her ears. A recorder lay on the desk. Kore wa ginko desu. She repeated it once, twice. Hit rewind. Listened again. The Japanese language had never come easy, but it had come alive. In the corner, an email notification glowed on her screen. Final notice, tuition unpaid. Account suspended. Her scholarship had covered only part. The rest had vanished with her mother's second job. Naomi didn't cry then. She just turned the volume up. Said the sentence again. I don't think we choose what we're good at, but we know what we love, even when the world tells us it won't matter. Later that night, she left her books in a cardboard box outside the dorm office. Walked out with a janitor's application in her inbox. But she kept one thing, the recorder. And every time she cleaned another lobby or hallway, she whispered phrases to herself under her breath. Practicing, remembering, not for them. Art, for her. The floor buffer hummed under her grip, circling slow patterns along the side hallway. Naomi's eyes followed the motion, but her thoughts had slipped again back to that moment in the library, when she first heard her own voice say a full sentence in Japanese without stuttering. The satisfaction wasn't in the grammar. It was in the rhythm. Like unlocking something that had been waiting to speak all along. A door clicked nearby, snapping her back. She moved to the next section, adjusted her gloves. But the memory stayed. Her old professor, voice gentle but firm. Fluency isn't speed. It's courage. Ispit. Back then, she didn't believe him. Now, it echoed louder than any command she heard this week. She passed by the finance office. Carson's door was shut. Inside, muted voices. She couldn't hear the words. She didn't need to. I've always felt that the line between who we are and who we used to be isn't straight. It loops, it bleeds, and sometimes it bites back. Naomi kept moving, past the staircase, past the framed mission statement, toward whatever was coming next. Her footsteps were soft, but no longer quiet. She turned the corner near the old loan archive. The scent of aged paper wafted through the air, same as it had in the university library. Her footsteps slowed. For a moment, she imagined shelves lined with language books, kanji charts, flashcards in green and blue. Her fingers twitched, remembering how she used to trace each character with care, like drawing meaning out of silence. She passed a mirror by the security desk. It wasn't meant for reflection, just decoration. Still, she caught herself in it. Uniform slightly damp from steam, Gloves creased, hair tied back tighter than she liked. But her eyes, they were the same ones that once stared at a map of Tokyo, thinking, maybe someday. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. Behind her, an elevator dinged. A suit stepped out, didn't glance at her. She moved aside, kept walking. The hallway ended at the staff-only stairwell. Naomi paused there, hand on the rail. Somewhere behind those walls, a conversation was unfolding. She wasn't invited, but her words were already part of it. And in my view, the real twist isn't when power shifts, it's when the people holding it realize too late. It already has. The summons came through the internal system, short, direct. Naomi Hayes, conference room 1. Now, no explanation. No reason. But the silence that followed spoke volumes. Carson stood outside the glass room already. Face tight, tie yanked a bit straighter. His fingers tapped the folder in his hand like a metronome, counting down to something no one had prepared for. Naomi stepped forward. Didn't ask why. Didn't ask if she was supposed to. The receptionist glanced up, clearly told not to intervene. Liana watched from her desk, frozen mid-keystroke. Valerie leaned against the wall, eyes narrowed. Naomi entered the room first. The lights were colder in there. The screen in front of them blinked twice, then steadied. Mr. Hiroshi appeared, clean suit, clean background, clean tone. Good afternoon, he said. I requested this meeting because I do not appreciate confusion in my partnerships. Carson cleared his throat. Mr. Hiroshi, I assure you. The client raised one hand. Calm, ishi. Controlled. I didn't request you to speak. The air snapped. Carson's lips parted, but no sound followed. Hiroshi's eyes shifted. Is Miss Naomi present? I'm here, she said, even quiet. The translator on Hiroshi's side didn't move. He didn't need one. Naomi stood still, her hands at her sides. Carson looked between them like someone realizing he had misread the rules to a game he thought he invented. Carson shifted beside her. The folder in his hand drooped slightly. He tried again. There may have been an masikin, a misunderstanding. The employee in question is not in any official client-facing. I didn't ask about her title, Hiroshi said, eyes cold as glass. I asked if she was present. Carson froze. A second passed. 2. He nodded once. Naomi stayed silent. She didn't look at Carson. She didn't need to. Her focus was locked on the screen on the man who spoke to her with clarity, not caution. Behind them, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. A clock ticked twice, too loud for how small it was. Outside the glass, a woman near the loan desk whispered, Did she just get called into a client meeting? No one answered. All eyes were forward. Carson cleared his throat again. I take full responsibility for any lapse. You don't need to speak anymore, Hiroshi interrupted, softer this time. I heard what I needed. Naomi's spine didn't move, but her shoulders relaxed by a hair. Barely visible, barely enough to register. But for those watching, it was everything. I've come to believe the scariest silence in any institution isn't when someone's punished, it's when someone else starts being listened to instead. The room had become a theater again, but this time, the scene wasn't his. Carson lowered the folder to the table, fingers splayed. He wasn't dismissed. But Naomi, she no longer needed permission to be seen. Mister? Hiroshi didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Naomi-san, he said calmly. I reviewed the notes you left on our previous call. Clear, formash, precise. Transparent. I found them more helpful than the last 3 quarterly summaries from this branch. Carson shifted beside her. His smile thinned, fingers twitching slightly. Sir, if I may, you may not. Hiroshi's voice was still calm. Still devastating. I came to this bank because of legacy relationships. But legacy doesn't excuse miscommunication. Or disrespect. He paused. I'm considering moving our account. Valerie, watching from outside the glass, straightened. Someone else gasped quietly. Unless, Hiroshi continued, I see a structural change. Today, Carson leaned forward. Mister. Hiroshi, What exactly do you mean by I want Naomi Hayes appointed as client operations liaison? Effective immediately. The room fell into a vacuum. No clicks. No breaths. She will work under your title, report directly to Tokyo, and handle all cross-cultural communication on our portfolio. Carson blinked. She's janitorial staff. No. She's fluent. And she listens? His tone didn't rise. But the hierarchy in the room collapsed like a row of cards. I've always felt that real disruption doesn't look dramatic. It looks like a simple sentence no one planned for. Carson opened his mouth again. Slower this time. Naomi stayed silent. But the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like power was shifting hands midair. Carson straightened his jacket. Sir, with all due respect, the Ms. Hayes hasn't gone through the formal client onboarding process. She doesn't have the regulatory background. What she has, Hiroshi cut in, is what none of your polished associates showed me this week. Clarity, initiative, and cultural respect. Carson's face tightened. Valerie stepped closer to the glass, lips parted as if ready to intervene. Brian, watching from the finance desk, began typing something rapidly into his phone. A notification pinged across the internal Slack channel. The title Naomi. Promotion. Hiroshi leaned slightly forward. You may choose your staff, but I choose who I trust with my voice. And for now, that's her. Naomi didn't blink, didn't flinch. She simply nodded. Understood. The room didn't exhale. It held, waiting for the next word, the next decision, the fallout. Carson looked at her not with hatred, with calculation. The center of the room had shifted. But no one dared move, not yet. The door to the conference room clicked open. Carson stepped out first, his gait clipped, his jaw tight. He didn't look at anyone. Valerie caught up to him 2 strides later, her heels clicking hard against the tile. You're just going to let this happen, she hissed. He didn't answer, didn't slow down, but his silence said enough. Naomi followed, a full 3 steps behind. She didn't rush. She didn't smile. She walked like someone who had nothing to defend anymore. Around her, heads turned. Monitors dimmed. Fingers hovered over keyboards but didn't press. One assistant gave a twitch of a smile, then looked away before it finished forming. Another employee by the printer muttered, "Is this even real?" A third nodded slowly. Eyes locked on Naomi like he was seeing her for the first time. Valerie stood frozen in the hallway, arms crossed. Then spun and disappeared behind the HR door. No one followed. Naomi kept walking, past the glass office walls, past the frame value statement that now seemed less like policy and more like irony. What always strikes me most isn't when power changes hands. It's when people's eyes stop asking permission to believe it. She reached the janitor's closet, then turned not toward the mop, but the room where something had just begun to echo. Inside the glass room, the screen hadn't gone black. Mr. Hiroshi was still there, speaking now to a man in a dark suit with a Tokyo cityscape behind him. Naomi stood just outside the janitor's closet, watching through the reflection. The conversation was in full Japanese. No subtitles, no translation. But she understood every word. Send a formal update to regional, said the man in Tokyo. And inform Arlington West we'll proceed with the liaison transition. Outside, Valerie clutched her phone to her ear. They're rewriting the chain of command from the outside, she hissed. We're being bypassed. Naomi stepped forward just as a black sedan pulled up outside the bank. A woman stepped out, sharp blazer, regional badge, clipboard in hand. She didn't wait for an escort. The security guard let her in without a question. Carson appeared again, this time slower, less sure. The woman nodded once. We'll speak with your staff shortly. For now, I need Naomi Hayes back in the room. No protest. Not from him. Not from Valerie. Not even from the air. Naomi moved. Her reflection passed over the etched mission statement on the glass. We honor excellence in every role. This time, the words didn't feel like a punchline. I've come to believe that when a system begins to crack, it doesn't scream, it simply stops recognizing who's supposed to hold the keys. She walked past Valerie without a glance. Back into the room. The screen blinked once. Then a voice said her name not as a test, but as a start. The Tokyo executive's voice cut clean through the speaker. Effective today, Naomi Hayes will serve as liaison for all East Asian client communication. Her insight has proven not only useful, but necessary. The words landed like a verdict. No hesitation. No qualifiers. Carson didn't speak. Hiroshi gave a small nod. We appreciate agility in uncertain times. Mrs. Hayes embodies that. Before anyone could process it, Valerie's voice sliced through the tension. Agility. She tapped her phone and flung the image onto the conference screen. A video, Naomi, in janitor uniform, on her knees scrubbing a toilet in the staff restroom. Dated 5 days ago. No sound. Just motion. This is your liaison, Valerie scoffed. Really? The room gasped. One of the interns covered his mouth. The receptionist took half a step back. Carson's mouth twitched. That footage isn't... But he didn't finish. Because Naomi stepped forward, slowly, without flinch. She reached the tablet on the desk, tapped a folder marked internal, ignored submissions, and cast it to the other screen. Proposal drafts, cultural training slides, archived voice memos in Japanese, Korean, and in Mandarin. All filed under her ID, all untouched, all time-stamped months ago. No one spoke. Then Hiroshi said, "This is precisely the humility and depth we require, not performance. Sishaka yuwakin hakumerun. Not posture, but presence. Ikatinum." Valerie's arms folded. Carson looked to the regional rep. She said nothing, just took notes. I've come to believe the real twist doesn't arrive when someone pulls you down, but when, in full view, you choose not to kneel. Naomi closed the folder. The janitor badge was still clipped to her waistband. She didn't remove it. She didn't need to, because now, no one was looking at that. If someone tried to define your worth with a 10-second clip, would you let it or show them what they missed? Drop your answer below. And now, as the building settled into silence, a new name appeared on the office door, one no one expected to belong there. 1 week later, Naomi walked through the same glass doors, but this time, they opened automatically for her. Not because of status, because someone finally updated her ID badge. Her nameplate now hung beside a frosted glass office, Naomi Hayes, Client Liaison. The paint was still fresh. The title was not. Carson was on reassignment. No one said where. Valerie hadn't been seen since the Friday meeting. A memo said she was on administrative review pending internal restructuring. The words were vague. The absence was not. Naomi passed the teller counter. Liana smiled, a real one this time, and said, "Morning, Miss Hayes." Brian waved her over later to weigh in on a cross-cultural form template. Even the receptionist now asked, "Do you want tea?" instead of ignoring her presence. Naomi said little. She took notes, filed reports, sent drafts. When she spoke, people listened not because her voice was louder, but because now it couldn't be drowned out. She didn't mention the video, didn't reference the mob, didn't bring up the way Carson used to talk over her presence like she wasn't there. I've come to believe that justice isn't always about what falls. Sometimes it's about what finally stands and refuses to move back. And that week, not a single request from Tokyo came through without her name on it. The shift came without announcements. No office-wide bulletin, no policy overhaul. But it came in the way footsteps slowed when Naomi walked past, not from caution, but from recognition. She placed her hand on the back of a rolling chair in the main bullpen. It used to creak loudly. Now it slid quietly. Like everything else, it had adjusted. Or maybe she had. Brian met her eyes from across the desk. "Hey, Naomi, got a sec?" He held up a form, half filled. "I was going to write, 'We appreciate your business,' in the template. But now I'm not so sure." Too stiff, she looked, tilted her head. "Depends who's reading. And whether they have ever been truly seen by this bank." He nodded, slower this time. Scribbled something new. "At the break room," Liana tapped a pen nervously. "I'm leading next month's inclusion seminar. Can I run something by you?" Naomi nodded. They spoke for 15 minutes. No one interrupted. Even the vending machine noise faded, like it was listening too. Outside, Naomi crossed the floor, her reflection briefly visible in a glass partition. Not cleaner's glass now, just Hers. In the background, the rhythmic sound of keyboards shifted less autopilot, more intent. I've learned that dignity rarely storms through doors. It sits down, answers questions, and stays until even silence knows its name. She didn't need a plaque to feel the difference. She could hear it. And for the first time, that was enough. The air was cool that morning, filtered through vents that used to hum louder than her thoughts. Naomi walked the same hallway she had mopped every Friday night for the last 2 years. But this time, the weight on her shoulders wasn't from a supply cart, it was something different. Something earned. A man in a maintenance polo stood on a stepladder outside what used to be the branch manager's office. He didn't look twice at her. Just said, "You want to check the level?" She nodded. The silver plaque gleamed under the overhead light. 4 words, sharp and simple: assistant manager, Naomi Hayes. No corporate fanfare, no HR welcome email with confetti gifts. Just 4 screws in drywall and a truth finally made visible. Naomi stepped forward. She didn't touch the door handle. Not yet. She let her fingers rest just below the name, tracing the raised letters. She didn't smile. Didn't cry. Just breathed in, once. Long and quiet. From behind, Liana passed carrying a stack of forms. She paused, hesitated, then offered a soft, "Congratulations." Naomi turned slightly. Their eyes met. No hierarchy. No pretense. Just recognition. She stepped inside. The room wasn't much. A desk. A chair, disorienting. 2 blank walls waiting for something personal. A small potted plant had been placed near the window. Probably HR's idea of welcoming. Still, she watered it later. On her desk was a folder, this time labeled with her name. Not as a recipient. As a reviewer, she opened it. 1. Client notes. Incomplete. Needs editing. She rolled up her sleeves. I've learned that the real arrival doesn't feel loud. It doesn't echo. It lands like the final page of a story no one else believed you'd finish. And outside, her name stayed still, even as the air around it began to shift. The folding chairs had been set up in careful rows, some still wobbling slightly on the tile floor. Crayons were scattered across a side table, next to printed sheets labeled "Your First Bank Vocabulary." Most of the kids had never stepped inside a bank before. Not like this. Not to be seen, only to be told no. But today, they had come by invitation. Naomi stood at the front of the room, not in uniform, not with a mop, but with a clicker in one hand and calm in her voice. She smiled. Konnichiwa. Watashi wa Naomi desu. The kids echoed her words back, clumsily but eager. One girl covered her mouth mid-giggle, surprised she'd said it right. Naomi nodded. Perfect start. She taught them about money. Not just the math, but the why. How saving was a story. How every dollar had a voice. If you treat your paycheck like a stranger, she said, it'll treat you the same way. A boy in the second row raised his hand. Did they really let you run a bank? Naomi didn't flinch. They didn't, until I stopped waiting to be let. In the back, Brian leaned against the wall, arms crossed but not defensively. Listening, Valerie's replacement clapped first when Naomi paused. Then others joined in. The applause didn't feel performative. It felt overdue. The kids asked for more Japanese. Naomi gave them phrases to practice. She didn't dumb it down. She just slowed her pace. Then they followed and smiled when they got it right. What I've seen is this: real leadership isn't who talks first. It's who leaves the room feeling like their voice matters. And that day, it wasn't the door that changed. It was the sound of kids leaving with words that belonged to them. They tried to define her by a mop, by a uniform, by a silence they assumed would last. But Naomi rewrote the story not with anger, but with presence. Not with noise, but with truth. Now ask yourself this. If they had erased your name before you even spoke, would you have stayed quiet or stepped forward louder than before? Drop your answer in the comments. What was your favorite moment in Naomi's journey? What would you have done in her place? If stories like this move you, if you believe in redemption, in second chances, in the kind of power that doesn't shout but stands, then subscribe now. This is Unveiled Wealth, where kindness sparks redemption, In silence breaks power. See you in the next story.